welcome to a new episode of the Knitted by Whitney podcast. Well, today is a bit of a hybrid episode because yes, I have an item to talk about and share info about the pattern that I knitted, but it's not going to take me very long to talk about it because it's just a small item. So I thought I would add a little something extra to this podcast episode and do another pattern roundup in this episode. I have never combined my two main video styles, but I thought I would put them together, and you'll see in a minute why it makes sense for me to put a podcast episode and a pattern roundup video together as one. First, let's address the plant in the room rather than the elephant in the room. Yes, I have a plant here right now. We have our money tree sitting over here because we were running our pellet stove on the weekend because we had a polar vortex going through Nova Scotia on the weekend and it was very cold. It was actually minus 22 and I got to do a really fun reel, which I might be able to pop in here, which is when I threw some boiling water in the air, and when it meets the freezing cold air, it immediately turns to steam, which is really, really cool, and I've always wanted to do it, so I finally got to do it, and it was so fun. But in order for us to stay nice and warm inside the house, we had to run our pellet stove because our main source of heat are heat pumps, which are electric, which don't perform very well in super cold temperatures, so we were helping it out by running our pellet stove, and our money tree did not like the heat of the pellet stove. So we had to move it over here, and unfortunately there's some leaves that are all dried out and there's a few that fell off. So we're just going to give it some TLC for the next little while. But that's why I have this giant plant right next to me. Anyway, let's start off the episode with my mug of the episode, which is just a plain glass mug. It's really difficult to see, but on this side, there actually is a picture of Rooster, not that you could see it, but it is embossed with sort of like a foggy glass look. But Doyle's mom made this for him for Christmas, but it is my favorite mug to drink chocolate milk out of, which is what I'm drinking today. One of my favorite treats is chocolate milk made with the chocolate syrup, so that's what I'm drinking today. So, cheers! And because that will be gone super duper quick, I also just have some water in a tumbler. So, I have 2 drinks today. But today, I am going to be sharing with you my latest finished object. It's nothing that I'm wearing today, but it is a relative of what I'm wearing today. In case you can't tell or might not remember, this is my souffle tee. It is one of my favorite makes that I've ever made. And it is joined by a relative. This is the Petit Soufflé. Both of these patterns are by Laura Penrose of Penrose Knits. And I knitted her souffle tee. I was part of the test knit group last winter. Actually, this same time of the year. So I knit this last year, and then Laura quickly came out with 3 more souffle designs. First up was the Petit Soufflé, and then the Summer Soufflé, and then the Chunky Soufflé. But I chose to knit the Petit Soufflé for some friends of ours' baby. Last year, some very good friends of ours had a baby, and at the time I promised them a baby sweater, and then I got caught up in some other projects at the time, and the baby sweater just kept getting pushed back and back and back, because I didn't knit it for them for their baby shower, because they had actually asked me to make something specific for them for their baby, so I knit that and gave it to them for the baby shower. So I promised them a baby sweater once the baby was born because they were keeping the gender a surprise until the baby was born. They had a girl, and I had a pattern already picked out back then, and I just never got around to it. And then after Christmas, I thought to myself, okay, the baby's birthday's in February. I really want to get a pattern done for her first birthday. And the pattern that I had picked out and started last year no longer fit her because it only went up to age 1 size. and I really wanted to make an oversized pattern so that the baby would have longer to wear it, because everybody says knit baby clothes larger because babies grow really quickly. So that's what I did. So I actually did not knit the 1 to 2 size of this pattern. I knit the 3 to 4 size. And I did that just because I wanted to make absolutely sure that it would fit her, because I gave our nephew a sweater when he was born in 2021, and he was a big baby and he sized out of it very quickly. So I wanted to avoid the same problem. So I knit something bigger than the baby it is intended for. But I'm really happy with the choices that I made. I knit the Petit Soufflé entirely out of stash yarn, so working towards using up my stash. I'm actually joining in with Rachel is Knitting. She's doing a challenge this year to use up 2,023 grams of yarn in her stash. So I'm going to weigh this later and see how many grams of stash yarn I used to make it. And I can tick that off, my amount of yarn that I've used so far this year. And the yarn is Knit Pick Stroll. And it's 2 types of Knit Pick Stroll. One is just the regular Stroll, the other one is Stroll Glimmer, which has stellina in it. And hopefully I can show off a bit of the sparkle factor. I'll try and take some B-roll footage and see if I can capture that. If not, I did take some close-up shots that I think do show it off, so I'll put one of those in. And the color is Frost, which is this very icy blue. And I chose this color because the parents of the baby really don't want her to be all girly, like they're not into that. They want things to be more gender neutral. So I chose more of a like stereotypical boy color, which is blue, which I think is stupid. I'm a girl and my favorite color is blue. So color is not gendered. I think that's stupid. But I thought I'm doing a bit of a girly design. Let's do it in some stereotypically masculine color. So that's why I chose to do it in this icy blue. I also chose this yarn because it is a superwash, which means that the parents can just chuck it in the washer and dryer and not worry about it felting or falling apart or anything like that. So it's a very easy care yarn for them. When it comes to knitting baby garments, I always go for an easy care yarn. And I think the 3 most popular ones are superwash, wool, acrylic, and cotton. I don't like knitting with cotton, so I never usually choose cotton. And I happen to have some superwash yarn in my stash, but I will usually gravitate towards either superwash or acrylic. I've done both. But that is something that I always make sure of whenever I knit a baby garment. It has to be easy care. I don't want the parents to have to treat the thing that I knit them for their baby as this like very delicate piece of clothing that can only go on for special occasions, and they have to be very careful that the kid doesn't spit up on or anything like that. It's like, no, I want to make you something that your kid can actually wear and live in. With the added bonus of being this really pretty handmade item. And I usually try to make something for when the baby is first born, because then it can be a bit of an heirloom piece that they can keep either in like a baby trunk or anywhere that they're keeping their baby items, so that they can look back on it once their child has grown up and think, oh, they used to fit into that, how cute. So yeah, that's kind of why I like to hand knit projects for parents. So let me talk a bit about the Petit Soufflé. This is basically a pint-sized version of Laura's original souffle. Ta-da! Which is knit out of mohair. And even though I'm wearing the short sleeve version, there is a long sleeve version. And Laura chose to make the Petit Soufflé a long sleeved one as well, but it would be very simple to finish it earlier on and have little short sleeve if you would like. When I shared my first whip picture of this sweater on my Instagram, I actually had somebody comment saying that whenever they make baby knits, they tend to make them with short sleeves so that the child can wear it longer without the sleeves looking too short as their arms get longer, which I thought was a really smart idea. But I chose to knit long sleeves because the baby's birthday is in February, and here in Nova Scotia, February is very cold. So I wanted her to have a long sleeve sweater that she could wear now and hopefully for a little while longer, like maybe a year or so. That's my hope, but I don't know until she tries it on and we can see how many months or possibly a year that she might get out of it. So I already loved Laura's original souffle. So when I needed a pattern, this was actually one of the first patterns that I looked at. And I knew the construction very well. I knew the method of creating it, such as adding the ruffle and doing the I-cord and the tiny little keyhole in the back with this little button. I had these just plain pearly buttons. And unlike my own souffle, I put the I-cord on right side out this time. So it actually looks super sleek. I also did a really good job of weaving in all of my ends to the nth degree because this is something that's going to be just tossed in the washer, tossed in the dryer. It's going to be worn by a child. I needed it to stand up to the test of time and not fall apart the first time it's washed or something like that because I didn't weave in an end well. So I did a very good job of weaving in my ends, and I really don't like weaving in ends, so that was a bit of a challenge for me, but I had to make sure it got done. I'm also really in love with these balloon sleeves, which I think are super duper cute for a baby or toddler at this point. I just think that was such a cute way to do it, and luckily I have little 9 and 12-inch circulars, so I did not have to use magic loop or DPNs. I was able to knit these on my regular circular needles, my little tiny ones, but I gotta say, it really was hurting my hands, especially doing the cuff, because that was when I was using the little 9-inch ones, and those are really pointy, because I was using US 6, which is 4 millimeters for the sleeve, and US 4, which I think is 3.5 millimeters for the little cuff. And the smaller needles get, the pointier they are. So tips of my fingers were really sore when I was working on those. And I actually made one accidental alteration to the pattern. It is actually supposed to be a folded hem, and I was on autopilot when I was working on this, and I did a ribbed hem. And also, this should be an inch shorter because I knit the stockinette body until the length that the pattern specified to then do the folded hem, but I just was on autopilot and went straight for ribbing. So mine is actually an inch longer than it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be like this. If I can fold it up. There. So it's technically supposed to look like this, but like I said, I was on autopilot and I just automatically went into ribbing. But either way, I still think it's really, really cute. So that is my Petit Soufflé. Well, it's not mine. It's my friend's baby's Petit Soufflé. Oh, right. I forgot to say whether or not I will make this again. Yes, the answer is, of course I will make this pattern again. I love to have a really good kids garment in my back pocket that I can make anytime somebody that I know is having a baby. Because like I said, I love to knit little sweaters or cardigans for babies that I know, but I will interject here and say these are only for the babies of people that really matter to me, because like I've said many times, gift knitting is not my thing. I really don't enjoy doing it, but when it's for somebody that matters to me, especially if it's a baby, it doesn't take me as long as something for an adult. I have no problem doing it. So now, before I move on to my pattern roundup section, I do want to do a couple book reviews. I know it's been a while since I've gotten a chance to talk to you about what I've been reading, but it's okay because I haven't been reading very much. I haven't been reading very quickly, so even though it's been since November, November would have been the last time that I shared a book review because that was my last regular podcast episode. Since then, I've actually only finished 2 books, plus the book that I was reading that I talked about in that episode. So it's okay that it's been a while. So I'm going to share these with you today, and shocker, neither of them are fantasy. So I do read things other than fantasy. Now there is one book that I've read recently that I do not have to talk about today, but I do want to briefly mention it because it was my favorite book that I read of 2022, and that is The Reading List by Sarah Nisha Adams. I don't have this book with me right now because I've lent it to my mom to read, and my mom is really loving it too. She's only about halfway through, but I have to say this was hands down my favorite book of 2022, and it was such a beautiful book to read. It is such a great story of an older man whose wife has recently passed away, his wife was a really big reader and he wasn't, but he gets into reading because he finds a book that she had borrowed from the library before she passed away, and he needs to return it to the library. But before he does, he reads the book, and then when he goes to the library, he asks for more books to read, and the worker at the library starts to give him books that she found on a reading list that just randomly popped up for her. So it's kind of neat because he gets into reading by reading the books on this list, and she uses the reading list to get back into reading and deal with some things that she has going on in her life as well. So I think it's just so special because these 2 characters who have nothing in common become very close through their shared love of reading. So it's this beautiful human connection, but also it shows the importance of reading and books and what those can do to bring people together, but also to help us through difficult situations. But they also allow us to come out of our shells a bit and create really great connections with other people. So that was my hands down best book of 2022 that I read. So I wanted to share that one as well, even though I don't have the book with me today. Before I finished that book, I had already been reading this little book. This is The Scoop by K.W. Thomas, and this was my holiday book exchange with my best friend Molly. I talked about this in one of my Vlogmas episodes, that every year we exchange a book, and this year this was my book that I got from Molly. And I'd shown in my Vlogmas episodes that I gifted Molly The Book Eaters. So if you want to know more about that, check out my Vlogmas episode. I'll link it below. The Scoop is a really cute story. It is a fun rom-com, and actually the author is a friend of Molly's, so she already knew that this was a good book when she gave it to me. It was a really cute story. It was about a journalist and a really famous yet very private Hollywood actor who start to fall in love. It was actually really interesting because throughout reading the book, you could tell that they were falling for each other, but at the same time, you thought to yourself, how is this possibly going to work out? Because he's a super private, very famous actor who is always trying to lay low, always trying to avoid the press, and she's a journalist who works for a British media outlet. I had no idea how it was going to work out, but it did work out in the end, and it was just really cute. It was a really nice, just fun, happy read, especially over the holidays when things can be a bit stressful. This was just a nice, calming read to have and read a chapter or 2 at night. Actually, when I got close to finishing this book, I stayed up much later than I should have, just because I was so close to finishing it and I wanted to know how it ended, and it was such a cute ending. So I recommend The Scoop if you like a fun little romance. And the last book that I'm going to talk about is one that I just finished yesterday, and that's A Year at the Chateau. If you have not watched Escape to the Chateau, stop my video right now, go watch that series. I highly, highly, highly recommend it. It is one of my favorite shows to just throw on anytime that I want to watch a video or have some background or just have some wholesome content to have on the TV. If you have not heard of Escape to the Chateau, it is a series that was shown on Channel 4 in the UK, but here in Canada, you can watch it on CBC Gem, other than the first 3 seasons, which aren't there anymore. You have to start with season 4. But it's okay. They're still really great to watch, even starting at season 4. But it's the story of this couple, Dick and Angel, who uprooted their life from busy London and bought a derelict chateau in France. And they decided to fix it up. And if you've seen the show, the book covers what you see mainly in the first season, because it goes from the day that they buy their chateau to the end of their first year, which includes their wedding. So it was such a lovely book to read, and I really enjoyed that. See, you can kind of see it here. The sections are both bolded and unbolded, and that's because the bolded sections are Angel's words and the non-bolded sections are Dick's words. And you really feel like you have the two of them sitting in this book talking to you. Their voices come across so easily. I know I've talked about before about how when I read nonfiction, I love reading about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And this is one of those books. And this was just such a nice book to have, to read a chapter or two at night when I just want something relaxing, something enjoyable, something I know is going to be good. There's not going to be anything that will jump out and surprise me or keep me up all night. It's just a cozy read. And I highly recommend this book if you like cozy little reads. Okay, I am starting to lose the light, but I do want to do my little pattern roundup before I lose the light completely. And that's because I'm only doing a roundup of 5 patterns. I'm going to be sharing with you my top 5 baby shower knits. And these are just little patterns that I think are really great gifts to give to a baby shower, or if you might be expecting yourself and you want a little cute something to knit to have for your baby. These are my favorite 5 patterns. So my first pattern that I'm going to share with you is one that I have knit for baby showers twice. This is Bear Rug by Cheryl Patzer. Now this is technically a bear rug for the floor, but I have knit it as a baby blanket, and both times the parents have just been in awe, and it has been their favorite gift that they've gotten. So this one I highly recommend. I have knit this in both a white boucle yarn, which looked adorable. It kind of looked like a polar bear. And I've knit it in brown yarn, and I've gifted it with the book Brown Bear by Eric Carle, who, if you don't know, he is the author of The Very Hungry Caterpillar, which is probably my favorite kids book of all time. It's so cute. And it's also a great book to give kids at a baby shower. But anyway, yes, I highly recommend the Bear Rug. It's remarkably quick to knit because you're knitting it with bulky or super bulky yarn. It is only ever in garter stitch, and you're knitting it in pieces that you then join together. Now, my only thing that I sort of give as a little warning with this pattern is if you're going to knit this one, make sure you can read your stitches, because the first time that I knit this pattern, I couldn't tell the right side or the wrong side to my garter stitch, and I ended up seaming one of the pieces in the wrong direction, so I actually have a row of stockinette, which only I can see that, nobody else can. But when I knit it the second time and I saw what I did the first time, I thought, oh, I could have easily fixed that. But the first one I knit in only like my second year of knitting, so I'm not hard on myself about that. But the second time that I knit it, I only did it in 2021, so I'd been knitting for quite a few years at that time, and I knew how to do it properly. But highly recommend that pattern. It's so cute. It's so fun. Some of the other pattern examples on Ravelry show people using buttons for the eyes. I sort of dissuade people away from that, partly because that can be a choking hazard for a baby, but also that can kind of get in the way of making it very washable, because that can clink around in your washer and dryer, and depending on the temperature, maybe the buttons might melt. I steer away from that. I just used black yarn for the eyes and all the little details like the paws and the nose and everything. So that's my first pattern that I would like to share with you. Speaking of animal-related projects, Eric Carle-related projects, the second pattern I would like to share with you is the Cuddle Me Caterpillar by Doreen Blask. This is a very hungry caterpillar. It's so cute. And because this is quite a large stuffy, it's kind of a nice size for a baby to sort of like cuddle with, and something that they could play with. Is very soft, so when they're starting to sort of play with things in their pen, this one is not going to hurt them because it's all knitted. It's nice and soft. And it's a great way to use up some stash yarn because every little section of the caterpillar is knit in a different color. And also, if you're going to gift them a Cuddle Me Caterpillar, you might as well also gift them the board book, The Very Hungry Caterpillar. If you can't tell, I'm a big fan of always gifting kids books. Number 3 on my list is actually a set of 3 patterns. It is Charlie's Day Set by Longavec Anna. I think this is a great pattern set to give at a baby shower because it gives the parents options. They could either dress their baby in the whole set or just use one piece at a time, and it allows them to have more flexibility with the item that you're giving them. I also think it's a really good idea to give pieces rather than a whole suit because it means it's going to be easier for them to quickly change the baby because you just need to pull down the pants versus undo lots of buttons or a zipper going all the way down the body. Also, when it comes to kids, babies have really large heads, and I've found that it's kind of tricky to knit sweaters for them. You always need to have some sort of a button placket to allow it to go over the size of the head. It's a lot easier when you're not the parent and you're giving this as a gift to just knit something that is going to be open and easy to get on anyway, such as a cardigan like this pattern shows. I also really love that there's a wide range of sizes available in this pattern. It goes from newborn up to 24 months, but it also condenses those sizes into really small increments versus some patterns will just say 0 to 12 months or 6 to 12 months. This one divides them up into 3-month sections, which I really appreciate. Now, if you don't want to knit a whole baby set, you just want to knit one piece, number 4 on my list will be the pattern for you, and it is Gramps by Tin Can Knits. This has got to be one of the most popular baby patterns on Ravelry, and for good reason. It's such a cute little sweater. It's great no matter what gender the baby is. You can knit it quite easily because it's made in worsted weight yarn, and you can be assured that it is going to be well-fitting because all Tin Can Knits patterns are really well-fitting and provide a really large size-inclusive range. I like with this pattern that you have the option to either knit it all in one color or use a different color for your edgings to make it a little something special for the baby. And if you're feeling really generous, you could also knit an adult size version to go along to give a little mommy and me or daddy and me little combo set with the baby sweater. But I don't know about you, I'm not that generous when it comes to giving gifts. One gift is enough. Now, if all of these previous patterns are just a little too much work for you, or maybe you're on a really tight deadline and you need a baby gift, number 5 on my list is just the pattern for you. It is the Baby Hat with Top Knot by Julie Taylor. This is a classic baby style hat with that adorable little top knot on the top. It also means that this is going to be a really quick knit because all you're doing is knitting in the round, decreasing to the top, and binding off, and you're done. And if you've seen my most recent video, you know that I don't believe in blocking hats, so you don't even need the blocking time for this hat. This is a great pattern to knit if you're really on a deadline, you need to have something done quick, or you just don't have a lot of yarn on hand either, because this pattern uses less than 100 yards of yarn. And it also comes in a variety of sizes, starting as small as preemie. So if you live in an area where there are local hospitals that are always looking for donations, such as little baby hats, this is a great one to crack out for donations as well. If the lighting around me is anything to go by, it's getting pretty dark here. I hope it's not too bad on the video. I'll see what I can do to make it look pretty good, but it's time to wrap things up. I hope you enjoyed seeing my little review of the Petit Soufflé, and I really hope you enjoyed my pattern roundup of my top 5 baby shower gift knits. If you're new here, thank you so much for joining me. And if you're a returning viewer, thank you so much for coming back. I really appreciate it. While you're here, hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and check out some of my other content. I mainly do knitting podcasts and pattern roundups, but I do have a few special videos thrown in there as well, so take a look around. And I guess that's it. Everyone, take care. Happy knitting.